Yo, 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 what's up, y'all? You are listening to the Lazarus Affect podcast, and I am your host, Lazarus Ross. Let's grow. Let's go. Aww. Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? It's your boy Laz, and we're back with another episode of the Lazarus Affect podcast. And in this episode, I have an amazing guest, my friend, my coach, Kole Whitty. Kole is the co-creator of the Condor Approach. And if y'all don't know, I am a part of the Condor Approach. I have become a master coach inside of the program. She's created this program with her husband, Ta. I met them last year and attended my first live Condor Approach last September. Kole has done a lot of different things in her life, been a musician, fitness trainer. She's facilitated countless psychedelic experiences for a lot of people, herself and with her husband. And I'm excited to have her here with me today. We're going to talk about the Condor Approach Live that is coming up next week. What is up, Kole?
Hey, Laz. So excited to be here. Mostly just because I like talking to you.
All facts, all facts. So before we jump into, I know we're going to talk about the Condor Approach, and I'm going to share some things. But share from your perspective, what called you and Ta to create the Condor Approach?
I mean, it's kind of a loaded question a little bit, right? Because it would have to be like everything that ever happened in my entire life is what caused us to create it. Because I could go back and look at how every trauma and circumstance and situation in my first marriage and being a bartender, and I can see how each one of those gave me some skill or insight or realization or caused me to move away from something one step closer to what I feel is kind of like my life's work, my destiny, my purpose. Mm-hmm. And so the short answer is everything caused me to create it. But from a like tactical at what point, Ta and I originally, we had been underground facilitators. So we were facilitating people through psychedelic experiences, leading trip to Peru, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But we were getting results other people weren't getting. And it was like, why? Now I did a healing journey. I'd had all these medical conditions, everything from, fibromyalgia to endometriosis, migraines. I'd had tons of broken bones, 3 traumatic brain injuries, a coma, the list goes on. So my physical body needed healing. My emotional body needed healing. My spiritual body needed healing. And so initially, we never really had the intention of this turning into like a program or a process or a methodology. It was when people started to come to us and say, yeah, but how did you do it? How did you heal your body? How did you create an epic relationship? How did you, create life the way that you're living life? And we were not financially abundant, but we were traveling the world on less than $16,000 a year. We were going to Thailand. We were going to Peru. We're going to all these amazing places. Mm-hmm. And the thing was, we learned what wealth as an experience is. Mm-hmm. Wealth is a feeling. At least that's how I differentiate it between that and like riches. For me, wealth is an experience, it's a feeling. And so we started focusing, well, what makes us feel abundant and wealthy? What makes us feel like just relaxed and at ease? And what we didn't know is there was a formula to it. It's just because of our conditioning and our coming together and building our life together, we had never looked back at the path. And so when people started coming to us and asking us, well, how did you do it? That's when we started really understanding the concepts. And then in 2021, I got a clear message in one of my psychedelic experiences that it was time for us to come out of the underground and teach. That there were people that could benefit from the same frameworks we used on ourselves, that we had used with clients, that we had used for retreats. And that's when we started hiring business coaches and people to help us understand the formula that we were already operating in. Just for us, it was natural or conditioned, probably. And so that's really what kicked off the Condor Approach in itself, but before that it was called Mentor in the Mirror. And before that it was called Facilitation Elevation. So this is a culmination of, when we used to do things like Fat Furnace or Coremageddon, these fitness workouts from early, we're talking 2013, all of those, we had been developing programs and things for people. So that's why the short answer is everything is what got us to create the Condor Approach.
Yo, that's what's up. Thank you for sharing that. So it's only been a couple of years.
Really, yeah. The Condor Approach, is really only since 2021.
Wow. I did not know that until today. I knew it wasn't 5 years, but I thought it was a little longer than that.
Yeah, I guess we're at about 2.5 years. So it first came out in February. In my mind, it started to come into fruition as the Condor Approach specifically in January, February 2021. So we're at about 2.5 years, give or take. But this will be our 10th live event.
Okay, legit. So what sets the Condor Approach apart from other methodologies that you have experienced?
I've learned a lot of coaching tools and techniques and, everything from somatic or body healing modalities like TRE to TAS, 30 years as a nurse, to life coaching to whatever. And the thing was that a lot of the stuff for me was a lot of mindset work, but it was about shifting into what is the thought that you want to have. But then willpower would fade. And it was the same with fitness, right? You could get people super stoked if you got them 5 to 10 pounds off that first week, get that instant gratification. But if there wasn't a longer term vision outside of only weight loss, they rarely stuck to it. There had to be more to it. There had to be more to the experience of losing the fat, or why, or what does it actually mean? And then what are the behaviors that cause someone to stall or stop? And so the same is the case with like life coaching or therapy or lots of modalities, is it stays up in your head and it becomes a really cool concept that you can reflect on. But it lacks the strategies that are required to fortify a new change. So we disintegrate ourselves. We go into an environment, say Tony Robbins or Landmark or some of these other like coaching spaces where it's a lot of rah. They could really work with your hormones and the chemicals in your body to get that euphoria and instant change. The problem is most people don't have an integration plan when they go home. How do I go home where there's donuts in the house and I don't want to eat that anymore? What is the plan? People think, no, I'll stay strong, but willpower will always fade. And so it's like you have to account for being human. And when you can start to account for that, that's when you start to find more success of what strategies and actions will I need to be able to take this big realization and put it into play. And so for me, the Condor Approach is more of understanding, like truly understanding what constructs, conditionings, and experiences cause you to react the way that you do and think the way that you do. And then once you have that awareness, you can kind of stay one step ahead of yourself a little bit, where you're like, cool, so if I go home and my partner brings home a box of donuts because they like to do that every Friday, what am I going to do? Well, first thing is I'm going to go home. I'm going to tell my partner, hey, I know this is something we've done together in the past. I'm going to inform them about a change that I want to make and why it's important to me. And can they support me in that? And then what I'm going to need is for them to either not bring the donuts, or I'm going to go out for a walk so they can bring them home. And then by the time I'm back, just have it put away, right? So that it's not in my conscious mind. I can have more of a plan. So for me, the Condor Approach is where the rubber meets the road. It's where, yes, we get the self-awareness, but more importantly, or most importantly, is the what happens when. When I start to have foresight, because a condor is a vulture. They're the largest, and they're about 13-foot wingspan. So when we say the Condor Approach, it's approaching with a condor's perspective, the horizon view. Now with all this awareness of how I operate, I can look at the horizon coming at me and start to see the potential pitfalls long before they come and have a playbook. Just like in football, just like in sports, just like in fitness routines, I have a big picture view of also where the storms are. and what I've done in the past when a storm came or whatever. I have that bigger perspective. So then I can literally create a manual of how to respond to things in my life when it comes. So for me, that really is the difference, is taking it the one step further of, now that we have this awareness, what am I going to do with it? How do I apply it? And then the Condor workbook that's available on Amazon is the staple, or like the stake in the ground, to help you do the daily check-ins so that you can see, am I staying in alignment with who I want to be?
Thank you, Kole. So now that you've explained that, I want to share from my lens what my experience has been, so the listeners can hear this part. So I met Kole and Ta in May 2022, last year. And I met them because I was working at a restaurant, and they were living in the high rise above the restaurant. They sat at my table, and I saw the clothes that they were wearing, and I felt the energy they were exuding. And I was like, yo, these are my type of people. I want to chop it up with them. And they were sitting at my table. So we did. And I told them the story of how I was working at the restaurant and what happened. And for those of y'all who don't know, I have been a fitness coach since 2013. And when I was working at that restaurant, I started working at that restaurant about a month before, and I hadn't had a job in 9 years. And what drove me to go work at that restaurant was in February of 2022. In 2021, I started really doing a lot of deep inner work, shadow work, uncovering a lot of patterns that I was unaware of for my entire life. How fitness was a lot driven by this deep-seated anger and need to prove myself and prove my self-worth through competing and being, quote, better than other people. And I started to unravel that. And one of the biggest pieces to unraveling the deep anger was experiencing ayahuasca in February of 2022. And long story short, Kole has mentioned psychedelic integration and how we go through these big mind expanding experiences. And a lot of people don't have solid integration protocols. Now, I went to this experience and we had talked about integration. And for me, I had moved a week later after the experience. And frankly, I allowed my integration to go through the floor. And when I met Ta and Kole and I got into the Condor Approach, I started to see, before I got into the Condor Approach, Kole's post. And I remember her speaking about sometimes people go into these big mind-altering experiences, and you can have a pillar of your entire life, something that has held your life up and created a lot of awesomeness in your life. And people go into these experiences and without solid integration go into making these big life decisions and kicking out that entire pillar. And when you kick out that entire pillar, a lot of the whole house can come crashing down. And when I saw her talk about that, I was like, wow, okay. What I noticed was I had thrown the fitness out, the baby with the bathwater. So I decided to kick the fitness out with the anger. And this is what made me choose to go work a regular job again and say, you know what, I'm going to leave the whole fitness thing alone. And the fitness thing for me has been a giant pillar in my life. It radically helped me change my life and my circumstances. And I decided to kick that whole thing out. So a few months later, I went to the Condor Approach Live. And that's when I started to see what in my own life, what she was talking about and what Ta was talking about with a deep, solid integration protocol after going into a big mind expanding experience. She mentioned a journal a little while ago, and personally, I use that journal, and it is a requirement for all of my clients that I work with to use the journal, fitness, whatever program any of my clients are in. None of my programs have psychedelics involved in them. And all of my clients use this journal because it's not necessary for psychedelics to be involved for the protocol of integrating your life experiences and the new things that you are learning, being aware of what your mind is doing, being aware of what your emotions are doing, being aware of how you're showing up in your day-to-day life. Are you being in integrity with what you say you want to do? This tool is just one of the tools that I have been fortunate to learn and use in the Condor Approach. But being able to use that and being able to use all the other tools, understanding constructs, understanding the hierarchy of esteem, understanding how our logic works and how we have different parts of logic in our body, in our being, and other things, and how all of that stuff comes together. This framework of bringing science and the woo-woo together with nervous system and all of that stuff, now I'm coaching fitness people again. And one of the biggest things that I learned with being able to use this integration protocol is being able to bring all of the stuff that I've learned in my life, like Kole was saying. When I asked Kole, hey, what got you to start the Condor Approach? And she said, everything. So for me, with all of the stuff that I've learned, all of the books that I read, all of the conferences that I've been to, all of the online courses, working with other coaches, for me, this is the perfect melding of the logical mind and the illogical mind and bringing it all together to work as one. And this is why we're doing this podcast, because this has helped me to change my life in another way. It has supported me in being extremely self-aware about how I show up in my life, but not just being extremely self-aware, also being extremely self-aware without using shame in the awareness. And one of the contexts that I learned in the Condor Approach is shame. It sounds like wrong, broken, bad, not good enough, or too much. And I'd already known shame was a big part of how I learned to operate in life. But when I got that context, it was just like a mind-blowing next level of seeing how deeply ingrained shame is in our society, how we have been taught by either literally taught to use it on ourselves and other people, like you should be ashamed and I should be ashamed and all this kind of stuff, and how our society uses it on in so many different parts of our language. And for me, having that and being able to have the awareness around that has supported me in being able to move through my life with a higher level of ease, flow. It's changed how I show up with my family. My relationship with my wife it's just ridiculously amazing and fulfilling. And this is why I'm sharing this with the world, because in using this context with my clients, in addition to everything else I've learned, because it has been a radical shift for me personally in my life and in my family's life, because now my family is getting this work too because of me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So
I think that's the key thing, Laz, is a lot of times, Ta and I talk about all the time, the Condor Approach has nothing to do with psychedelics. If you look at most of, what we're teaching, and even if you look at the portal of the videos, very little of it has to do with psychedelics themselves, because they are tools. We call them master teachers versus plant medicine, which is what a lot of people in the general population call them. But the tools and practices are things we were never taught. What do you do after a car accident? What do you do after a surgery? What do you do after a marriage? What do you do after having a baby? You have parts of yourself that die and evolve and change. So it's like, who is Laz the father when he becomes a father and the fitness guy? Who is Laz the partner and the husband. And so all of these different aspects were never taught how to integrate who I was and who I want to be and who I'm working on becoming. And so integration, when we say integration is not optional, we're not saying that it's not just an add-on feature for a retreat, as in, it needs to be added. What we're saying is it's going to happen no matter what. So if someone gets a broken bone, say their arm gets broken, the arm is going to heal. We don't need psychedelics to heal. We're actually all already healed where we are, but we have healed into often disfigured, dysfunctional, or not useful ways, because we are actually healed in many ways already. But a lot of those healed parts is like scar tissue. It's immovable. It's not flexible. It's not the same as the skin texture was before. And so just like with a broken arm, you go to a doctor to decide what's the treatment for the break. What is the integration? They don't just put on a cast. They say, we're going to put on a cast. We'll see you in 6 weeks, because then we need to take it off. Because if you keep a cast on, the muscles will atrophy. Right? And then you're supposed to do physical therapy after a surgery and all these things. Those are integrations to get the healing part of you into the most functional it can be. But that's where our integration ends, where if it's an injury, you have a little bit of physical therapy, but really you need to go get myofascial release if you were cut open. Really, you need to be able to have work on your scar tissue. There's so many other aspects that get left behind. That's why we have all of these different types of body work as well, where you've got Rolfers who do myofascial release. You have body workers, massage therapists. They all have different skill sets. One specializes in pregnant women, and another, specializes in breast cancer survivors. All of these are integrators. The problem is we as individuals don't have jurisdiction over our integration overall. It needs to all come to the table. My heart, mind, body, and soul, or what we would call the hierarchy of esteem. All those different parts of myself. Who and where and how are you going to pull all those pieces together to see how am I integrating all these parts after a broken leg? How am I going to integrate if I was also my son's baseball coach? I need a new integration plan to integrate in this thing that just changed. And so the Condor Approach brings all of these ideas and concepts, or at least a lot of them, into one location, so that you go, I can get clarity in who I believe myself to be, who I want to be, and which parts of me I'd actually like to let go of, because it's not who I want to be. Those are the healed, wounded parts, the ones that are healed, but it's not necessarily, I might be reactive, I might be controlling, and it might be to keep someone safe, because in the past I couldn't keep someone safe. But it doesn't mean it's always functional for every environment, and I want optimal. I want not just an enhanced experience, I want an optimal experience of life, kids, family, all of it.
Yeah, that's been my experience. I don't want to just go into an experience, whether it be with a life coach or any sort of coach, or a psychedelic experience or anything like that, conference, whatever it be, and just come out feeling better.
Yeah.
I want to live my highest timeline, and I want to integrate in a way that's going to allow me to see how I'm showing up each day, so I can do that, not just feel good. Feeling good is great, and that's part of it. That's the core of it. But now what?
Totally. And this is the thing, Laz, is if it was, most people are making choices every day to just feel a little bit better, right? Might be alcohol, might be cannabis, might be whatever. It's a short-term gain. But if you want long-term benefits so that you don't have to buffer and cover up and hide and diminish or dissociate, you have to make changes. Because truthfully, if we only just wanted to feel better, then, hey, just have some heroin. That'll make you feel great for a period of time, but it's not going to fix the problems, right? But people are using ceremonies the same way too. Just because you go have a God experience in that container, I don't actually see it as that different as someone that is, abusing substances at home on the weekends. It's just a way to sometimes make excuses. So if someone doesn't take the actions to make the changes in their life so they don't have to run from it anymore. So they don't have to retreat. I mean, a retreat is literally to pull out of your life, which is a beautiful gift to give you a new experience of what might be possible. But if you go back in and just plug back into the same matrix of complication and drama and trauma and participate in it again, or become complacent and say, well, then I'm just not going to rock the boat. None of this really matters till your health starts to fade, because now you know what you didn't know. Now you're aware of how you're participating. Now, like, people don't really understand consciously what it takes to confront yourself in these situations and realize what you're feeding, what you're contributing to, what your part in all of it is, whether it's enabling or fighting or, cohesion or coercion or whatever the words would all be. That's confronting. So I know why a lot of people don't even really want to know.
I know we're going to be wrapping this up real quick, and I'm just going to break this part down. When she says people don't really know how they're participating, it can be real easy. And I'm telling you from an aspect of, it's 2023, and years ago, over 10 years ago, I first learned about the concept of victim mentality. Mm-hmm. And what my experience has been personally is someone who when I learned about victim mentality, there's no way that I wanted to be a victim in any way of my life at all. This is something I'm dead set against. And one of the things that the Condor Approach helped me to see, one of the frameworks that is taught and that I teach my clients, is how to see that when you don't know that you're participating in these things, it can be real easy. And I was in it. And I'm telling you, when I was working at the restaurant, I was in it. This was not that long ago. Being a victim. And I'm someone who consciously knows what being a victim is, but I couldn't see how I was being a victim in certain areas of my life. And I know a lot of people hearing this, like, I don't want to be no victim. And I'm telling you, and I'm not telling you that you are being a victim, but what I am saying is that I have had the context of not being a victim for a very long time. And I noticed how I was being a victim in a lot of different areas in my life because of what I learned in the Condor Approach. And I can step out of being a victim with grace and peace instead of something's wrong with being in that spot. Mm-hmm. This is part of the magic of what I've learned in the Condor Approach. And this is why I teach my clients this stuff too, in all of my programs.
Yep. So, the thing is, like, so many people are so against being a victim that they will fight the fact that they are, but even the reaction would be a victim energy because you would feel attacked. And in the attack, you would have to become your own victor to save yourself from the thought of someone else putting an identity on you. You're a victim. Because if you didn't relate to it at all, there would be no charge. If you were like, okay, sounds good, you're moving on. But even if someone says, look, you're kind of acting like a victim, if you get reactive, you have now felt attacked. Your anger is coming online to defend your identity and idea of yourself that is under attack, which makes you come online as a victor to save the victim part of you who feels attacked. So even in that moment, you have already exhibited victim. We say even victim frequency. Like it is a frequency and energetic tone that exists.
The victor saving yourself from being a victim from the villain.
Yep.
It's a trap.
Yes, it is.
So check it out. Next week on Tuesday, Condor Approach Live is starting. Now you can come in person, you can come online, and you can come virtually. But if you go and sign up, and the link will be in the description of this podcast episode, you can go and sign up through my link and use the code half off, all caps. And I'll put that in the description. You can come in person for half off. You can come virtually for half off. So it's a ridiculous. What's that?
It is a ridiculous offer in all of it. And I'm going to one up it, Laz. Anyone that even wants to book for February so that they could get here, if they book by Friday at midnight, can still get half off and get their ticket for February, because there's nothing like coming on in person if you can swing it. Facts.
I'm grateful that I live here. I'm grateful that I've been able to come in person as many times as I have, and that I'm going to be coming in person again and again and bringing others with me, because this is always going to be a staple in my framework of coaching people. No matter what other coaching modalities I learn, this is going to be a staple. This is going to be something that I'm teaching everybody that comes into my world, because it will radically change how you view things and how you show up. So if you want to come, hit the link in the description, use the code half off, and we'll see you there. Kole, I appreciate you, fam.
I'm stoked. I love where everything's going. I love how you show up, Laz, and I'm excited for everything else to come. You know, you're growing within as a master coach as well. So anyone that comes in is going to get to spend more time with you also. So it's a screaming deal all around in every possible way.
Screaming deal like a screaming condor caw. Let's go. All right, y'all. That's it. We out. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace.
Peace.
I appreciate you coming through and listening to the podcast. If you haven't already subscribed, please go ahead and do that. And if you know somebody else this podcast can help, share it with them. Let's go. Let's grow. Aua.